Hey, messy people. Welcome to Everything's Messy podcast. I am your messy host, Sarah Wilson. Joining me on the messy journey today, I have Dr. David Bilstrom, functional medicine doctor who is quadruple board certified expert in autoimmune disease reversal and prevention. Welcome, Dr. Bilstrom.
So nice to be here, Sarah.
So my audience is usually they're ready for like a messy story and a journey, but I think today, because you're such an expert in this field that I am just a tiny seed trying to soak up everything that I possibly can, we're just going to take advantage of your expertise, I think, if that's all right with you.
Sounds great.
All right. So the the foundation of functional medicine came to be because the conventional medicine system was not working, or has these practices been around for a really long time?
Inherently, the knowledge of the body's innate ability to heal itself and to stay healthy, though need for some assistance in making that happen, has sort of been around for thousands and thousands of years, including using naturally available compounds, even things that are within us already, to make that happen. It's kind of made its way back into the forefront, or hopefully soon in the forefront, because we're just seeing the limitations and only using medications and surgeries to try to deal with every health issue there is out there. And there's just so many gaps in being able to take care, prevent, and reverse chronic disease simply with the medications and surgery.
Yeah, I've often said on this podcast, the emergency crisis medicine that we have is bar none, like it's exceptional. But the maintenance of medicine, I feel like we're lacking. And this, you know, pills that they try to push for people that could do different means to maybe be better or heal themselves is the narrative that I'm really trying to get rid of because I'm just, in my own experience, it hasn't been helpful. All the way to my heart attack, they pushed a statin and high blood pressure medicine, neither of which I had. And so it was very frustrating to go on these medicines with all of the side effects that they also come with. And it did more damage than it did good.
Yeah, we really need to kind of shift more to a proactive kind of way. Nobody really talks about prevention, though the body is so smart. If kind of the language that the body uses, prevention is what the body innately does. And we need some help. Our world is very challenging as far as being able to stay healthy. You see so many health issues going on nowadays that, used to happen a little bit, but now it's like everybody and their brother and sister has it. They talk about the civilization diseases, all these things that are so much more common than they used to be. But the science is very clear kind of why that is, and the science is very clear what we need to do about that. But also, we know how the body likes to fix things, and we can be in a position to reverse the process that usually has gone on for years, if not decades. By the time that somebody's diagnosed with something, we can get the body back towards where it started from in a healthy place. And then truly, whatever health issue somebody has, we've been in a position to reverse the process. But also now we've done our due diligence to try to really make sure this person stays healthy the rest of their life.
Mm.
It's not just one thing after another after another.
Right. Right. I've, like I said, the tiny journey that I've started and sort of my own reading that I've done seems like a lot of it starts in the gut and the gut problems that we have probably to modern day food and things like that. But seems like if we can at least attempt to stabilize the gut, that might help with a lot of these ongoing issues.
Absolutely. And the gut is big in so many different ways, including what people hear a lot about called the intestinal microbiome, the mix of the good, bad bugs in the gut. And ideally, you want a lot of the good guys. These are basically these warriors fighting the battles for you. And there's the bad guys. Well, they're the ones that try to take you down. And so you always want a lot of the good, not a lot of the bad. Now, one of the things I think is so fascinating, I've been doing a deep dive for a long time, is every single body part we have has its very own unique microbiome, mix of good,
Mm.
bad bugs. But the mix of good, bad bugs in the gut, the intestinal microbiome, really is a central mechanism in maintaining or regaining the proper microbiome in every other body part. And so this is where you'll hear things like the intestinal microbiome breast axis, where if the intestinal microbiome is disrupted, the gut's disrupted, it's going to throw off the microbiome in the breast, increasing breast cancer risk.
Wow.
And So it is such a central mechanism that is so easily thrown off with sort of the world we live in, the medications we take, all these kind of things. Though there's some very big central mechanisms that can get thrown off that we can address and reestablish that, and that's reestablishing the health of the entire system at the same time.
Wow, that I didn't know the link for breast cancer. I've heard it, the gut referred to as almost the second brain, but it sounds like it's almost the first brain. Seems like everything is centrally located in the gut, and without that being in homeostasis, you're not going to get the rest of the body functioning the way it needs to be.
Absolutely, and that's why the gut is so, and the intestinal microbiome is so important for brain development. There's basically 4 to 5 different microbiomes in a woman that starts to create the microbiome in the placenta and in the fetus before even the baby's born during pregnancy. And so the intestinal microbiome is being set up even during the pregnancy,
Hmm.
and then things that happen around delivery, right after delivery, all these different things start setting up. Even the breast milk has its own unique microbiome
Wow.
that is helping to establish the intestinal microbiome in the baby. And the breast milk of a woman who delivered the child premature is different than the microbiome of the woman's breast milk that
Mm.
delivers a term baby. So it's all these things that can kind of start throwing it off. But if you get this really great microbiome, it starts even before the pregnancy is over. That's already driving the development of the brain and the nervous system
Wow.
before the baby's born, but also then the nervous system during infancy and adolescence and all this kind of stuff. So truly, it is the first brain.
Wow, that's really fascinating. And so talk a little bit, there's, you know, probiotics, prebiotics. Now I'm hearing postbiotics. Are all of these necessary, or is it really just the food we're putting in our body to bring it back to sort of neutral?
Well, this is why I love the concept of your podcast because it gets really messy. And part of the messiness is, oh my gosh, the body is so complex.
Hmm.
But also the body is super logical. And so you can get kind of lost in the minutia and the
Hmm.
sort of what appears to be a big mess. It, but you kind of got to go back to, okay, well, we know the inherent logic of the body. And if we do the biggest fish to fry, basically, you're basically just getting the body to do most of the work because that's what it does anyway,
That's what it
inherently,
does in
right?
it. Yeah.
And so a lot of people can kind of put a lot of time and effort and educate themselves and read and do these things. So like if somebody comes to see me as a patient, a new patient, I might see somebody who's really done their homework. Oh my gosh, it's so impressive. They're on 40 different things. And I can look at the 40 different things and every one of them, given what their health issues are that I review before I walk in the door, um, makes total sense. I'm like, oh
Mm.
my gosh, this person has made themselves a genius on this kind of stuff. But they're missing some of the biggest pieces of the puzzle. And
Mm.
even though I know they've set a great foundation, everything they've done, lifestyle, supplement, whatever, is set a foundation, but they can't get over the hump because they missed a couple of really big central mechanisms. Um, and then we say, hey, the body is so smart, but if we're doing too much stuff, too many things, the body gets a bit confused. It's
Mm.
like, well, this is telling me one thing and another, and it's all great. But it's like if you're a general and you're trying to make decisions, during wartime, I wouldn't advocate that to anybody. But a general, if you got 100 people screaming at you, they all may be screaming the right thing, but you're like, it's just too much. I can't
Yeah.
process that much information. So the body
Right.
can get overwhelmed. Where if you give it just the right amount of information, the body basically goes, "Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Cool, I got it covered," and off it goes and fixes these things.
Right, right. Which I think, I'm a very big advocate on knowing your own body and advocating for yourself, but even more so to seek out functional medicine, because I think one of the biggest things we're missing in the conventional medicine part is the natural ways to implement into your life, whether that's getting enough sun, grounding, these other things that are so important that I feel can also help with that. But like you said, too much probably isn't a good thing.
At least as far as like supplements. Now, I use a lot of supplements, and just about everything that uses is natural. It's either in the body already, or it's something that probably is in a food that humans have consumed for eons to tell the body what to do and all this information. Um, But yeah, truly, the body is so smart. It really, I kind of use it as an example. Like you're walking around the house and with bare feet and you stub your toe. You're hopping around in terrible pain. Well, inherently, we think, oh, our body knows how to fix stuff. I'm not going to be hopping around in terrible toe pain the next 50 years.
Right.
2 or 3 minutes, I'll be fine. I'll try not to do that again because, oh, that hurt. But then we get these chronic things, and it's really easy to go, well, that's just how it is. I'm going to have it forever. The medical people I've talked to, they say, we don't know why you got it, and you're going to have it forever. And well, that's just how it is. And I'm like, no, you wouldn't say that about that terrible toe pain, right?
Right.
You knew the body was going to fix that. Well, the body can fix this other stuff. You just got to get out of the way, whatever's gotten in the way, and then the body's ready to fix. And so functional medicine is trying to answer the question why somebody got something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know why you got something, you're really in a position to reverse what you got. Even it doesn't even matter what name they put on it, doesn't matter what you got. If you figure the why, your body just can fix it.
And that goes back to our conversation with fixing the gut and these other things that come in. And you make it sound so simple almost, but some of these chronic issues, I have Hashimoto's, low thyroid, I do selenium and like all these other things, but I still have to take Armor Thyroid according to the doctor because the levels just will not balance out. And so I feel like others that you maybe not know of the supplements get just as frustrated. And I've talked to several women, especially, that they go into the doctor, they list these things that check the boxes of having hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's, but the doctors tell them, well, you're in normal range and send them on their way. And so then they're left feeling crazy or, not listened to or even gaslit because no, hey, it says I'm normal, but really it's not.
Yeah, and that's of course, as you know, a story that just happens over and over and over and over again. And so one of the things that I teach, like in my book and my courses, two different levels of courses for non-medical people, two different level of courses for medical people, is when you do a blood test and you get the results back, there's three columns of information. There's a name of the test, there's your results, and there's what they call the range. Now, what happens is people tend to treat the range as if that's where the healthy people are,
Mm.
but it's not. It's actually based on statistics.
Oh,
And
wow.
so what the labs do, and this is why ranges are different in different labs. Because if they were the same in every lab, you go, well, that must be the science. So it's like, no, they're different in every lab. It's like, so
Right.
it's not based on the science because it's different in every lab. What's it based on? Well, it's actually based on statistics. And
Mm.
when you test 100 things, doesn't matter what you're testing, the distribution of results always looks like a bell-shaped curve. So kind of a
Hmm.
mean right down the middle, low end, high end, middle.
Right.
So if we test the height of 100 different people, the distribution is a bell-shaped curve. Few people really short, few people really tall, more people in the middle, weight, all this stuff. So then arbitrarily, the labs say, hey, this is how we're going to develop this reference range in our lab. We're going to say that everybody that falls within 2 standard deviations of the mean, that's going to be our range. By definition of statistics, 95% of all results fall within 2 standard deviations of the mean. Doesn't matter what you're testing, right?
Sure.
It's grading curve at school, right?
Right.
And so you actually have to be the 2.5% worst, low, or high to fall out of the range. You have to be basically be the 5 worst out of 100 people tested to fall out
Hmm.
of the range.
Hmm.
So if you fall out of the range, you get flagged. Basically, you're an F on your test. If you're in the range, you're just someplace between a D minus and A plus.
Right.
And your body loves A's, is good with B's, does not like C's and D's at all,
Hmm.
but it basically absolutely hates F's. And so oftentimes, and the thyroid is a classic example, well, they'll say, oh, you're almost low. If you were just a couple, you'd be low, out of the range low. Well, basically, you're a D minus, right?
Hmm.
Because if you were like here, you'd be an F. And
Right.
so in the body, it's basically, well, if it's something really good, you want to be way on the high end. If it's something really bad, you want to be way on the low end, kind
Sure.
of a thing. But basically, they're just comparing you to everybody else. But the people they're comparing you with are the people that don't feel well. And that's
Mm.
why they went to the lab to get tested in the first place, too,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you got the statistical norms working against you, but you also got, well, you're being compared to unhealthy people already. So, like in my book, I said, okay, these are the labs that should be run to know why you got this chronic health issue, including Hashimoto's, including the labs to look at thyroid that are much more important than some of the ones that typically get used to determine dosing, which is fraught with the troubles just using a couple of labs. They don't go deep enough, but also, well, these are where you should be. This is where the healthy people are. We know this. They tested healthy people, including astronauts.
Wow.
People that climb Mount Everest, they go, well,
Sure.
where are these people? That's where I want to be. And
Yeah.
we know that kind of a
Optimal.
thing, right?
Right.
And all the scientific data there. And so right from there, it's really gets confusing. And then when you got an autoimmune thing like Hashimoto's, where your immune system that should be protecting you from things that are not you and going to hurt you, actually starts making antibodies attack on their own body parts. And in Hashimoto's, it's the thyroid. And you go, good gravy. Why is my body attacking itself? That seems a tad counterintuitive, kind of counterproductive to be attacked by own body parts. Basically, was self-destructing. Fortunately, the science is really clear why that happens. And then we can stop the attacking of
Hmm.
whatever body part it is. And then that body part wakes up. And then ideally
Wow.
people can make their thyroid hormone by themselves again. And because you fix what's going on, now you're in a great position not to ever get new autoimmune disease. And we know that autoimmune immune system issues are part of so many chronic health issues that we didn't think before. It's not just all the classics, rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's, multiple sclerosis, those kind of guys. It's osteoporosis.
Hmm.
It's heart attacks and strokes and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia and autism and bing, 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 bing. All these different things are like, oh my goodness, this is immune system disrupted. This is autoimmune immune system issues. We're in a position to prevent all those things because we know so much how the immune system works. But we're also in a position to reverse it. You have it and then lock you in place so you just don't keep getting one thing after another any longer.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's why the functional medicine part to me is crucial. I was told very early on, when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, that I would have Hashimoto's eventually, that I would have some sort of thyroid issue. It
Super
wasn't,
tight connection between those two. Yep.
but it wasn't even a, hey, try this or maybe go on this. Like it wasn't even, let's try and even maybe delay the onset of it. It was just, no, no, you have to accept this is what's going to happen. And so now here I am trying to reverse, like you said, at least as much damage as I possibly can. But I think about these kids that are newly diagnosed type 1. What does their future look like? I hate to just say I accept that because you have one, now you're going to get the other, now you're going to get the other. I mean, I hate that narrative.
Can I tell you something really cool about type 1 diabetes?
Sure.
Ooh, this is going to be good. Thank you. I love talking about this stuff. If you can't tell, I
I
love talking.
do.
So on Hashimoto's and all the traditional autoimmune disease, you make antibodies attacking your own body parts. Those body parts get beat up. They can't do their work, right? It's like Hashimoto's. Well, then the thyroid can't do its work. They can hormones. Rheumatoid arthritis, where you attack the joints get all beat up. They get damaged, right? Multiple sclerosis, you attack parts of the brain gets damaged, this kind of stuff. So with type 1 diabetes, I always was saying since my wife and I said we're going to change the way the autoimmune disease is dealt with worldwide. This is ridiculous. We can't keep going this way. Um, I was always in a conundrum where we can stop the body from attacking itself, but we cannot get that done in pancreas to wake up and make insulin
Mm,
again. What
yeah.
is going on here? And then a patient came to me and said, hey, doc, did you ever read about this thing called TUDCA? Now, I learn as much from my patients because they do their homework as hopefully I'm able to share with them. And TUDCA, I said, no, I haven't heard that. But it was, oh, you check it out. I checked. Oh my gosh. So this TUDCA, made by the liver, naturally occurring, right? It's a bile acid. And it turns out that our world makes it very challenging to be healthy. And what happens is, if you take away the water in the human being, we're 80% protein. We got some vitamins, we got some minerals, we got some fatty acids, and we're a protein. Hormones, neurotransmitters, cell walls, we're all just protein. Hair, nails, all this kind of stuff. And so what happens is the world around us, environmental toxins, stress, other kind of things, create inflammation right in the spot in the cells where proteins are made, new healthy proteins. And what happens is it's in a place called the endoplasmic reticulum, and it creates endoplasmic reticulum stress, which causes misfolding of the proteins where they're being formed. And a misfolded protein is not that protein anymore. And so the liver's got to make TUDCA. They call it the chaperone molecule because it chaperones proteins through the production process so they do not become misfolded. Super cool. Well, This misfolding of proteins, misfolded protein response, is a central mechanism in all the things they call civilization diseases.
Mm.
All of these things are so much more common now than they used to. Things like chronic kidney disease, liver disease, diabetes, obesity, cancer, heart attacks and strokes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, autism, cataracts, retinal diseases, gut issues leading to autoimmune diseases. It's
Wow.
such a big one for neuroinflammation. This TUGTA, they think, is going to be this absolute game changer when it comes to Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, Lou Gehrig's disease, the huge increase in those kind of guys. But if the liver can't make enough TUDCA, the cells in the pancreas that make insulin can't make insulin.
Wow.
So this is why when a baby's born, it takes about 8 months for the liver to become fully mature. So a premature infant's liver doesn't make as much TUDCA, TUDCA, as a term baby's. So this is why premature infants get more type 1 diabetes, because there's not much TUDCA being produced to keep the pancreas making insulin.
Mm.
Now, it sets the system in a bad place in general, so they're more likely to get type 2 diabetes and a lot of other diseases as adults. So it sets the system in a beautiful place. You don't get stuff, or if it's compromised, kind of like the microbiome development is part of this, right?
Hmm.
Can't make enough. So I go, oh my gosh, TUDCA helps produce more insulin producing cells in the pancreas, and those cells make insulin. And I'm like,
Wow.
holy cow, that is why the cells, I can't get these cells to be new cells to be produced to make insulin, despite getting rid of the attacking, because the lack of TUDCA. But then it got even cooler. So then it turns out that in type 1 diabetes, it is a fairly unique autoimmune disease, as far as I can tell. It's not antibodies attacking the cells that make insulin. And I go, well, that's wild. Why do the cells not make insulin then if it's not antibodies attacking it?
Hmm.
Well, it's the other part of the immune system called the innate immune system that's involved in inflammation control. So there gets to be so much inflammation, lack of TUDCA, misfolding of insulin proteins. The immune system cells come in, kind of create more inflammation. These beta islet cells in the pancreas that make insulin basically become an engine of their own inflammation, and they just stop making insulin. They go dormant.
Mm.
They're not destroyed, they go dormant. And so people that are on insulin pumps, 10 years, 20 years, those cells in the pancreas that make insulin are still there. They're just dormant.
Wow.
And I go, oh my gosh, well, it should be a lot easier to wake something up than to make something healthy and new, right?
Yeah.
So 13 years ago, Harvard published a study in mice, and they have a mice model of everything, cardiovascular disease in humans, type 1 diabetes in humans. So they can basically try this in this same model and see if it works. It doesn't. They took all these mice with the mouse model of type 1 diabetes, and they destroyed the cells in the pancreas that make insulin with a chemical. They totally destroyed them. And I read that and I go, well, that's not what happens in humans, though. It's that
Hmm.
you only destroy the cells, they just go dormant. But if they gave those mice TUDCA within 100 days of destroying their cells in the pancreas make insulin, they got new cells produced, they start making insulin, they reverse type 1 diabetes.
Wow.
Totally. And I go, well, that's harder than the true picture because they destroy the cells. That's not what happens in the vast majority of humans with type 1 diabetes. And they go, okay, well, this TUDCA, this is really cool. If this TUDCA ever becomes a prescription medicine, we'd really have something. And I looked at the fine print. And I go, so what company are they using to get this TUDCA? It's the same one that we use, the same one that's on my website. So with the children we see with autoimmune disease like juvenile rheumatoid arthritis and uveitis attacking their eyes, or even autism, we see children from 21 time zones around the world, adults too. Universally, those children with autoimmune disease, almost just about universally, their pancreas is not making insulin.
Mm.
They're at 0, 1 to 2. They should be at least 4 to 6 on insulin levels. And we go, oh, you're moving to type 1 diabetes because you got this one autoimmune disease, you're moving to type 1 diabetes. But universally, we've never had one kid, we couldn't do this. We wake up their pancreas and start making insulin again.
Wow.
And that's not even with the TUDCA. But now with the TUDCA, we're actually able to take people that have been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and wake those cells up again, those dormant cells, kind of a thing. But this goes back to the gut. So remember when I talked about the intestinal microbiome breast axis, where
Hmm.
there's the intestinal microbiome pancreatic beta cell axis, the ones that make insulin.
Hmm.
And so one of the driving, we now know that infections are part of all chronic disease. So there's a certain type of virus in the gut, in our intestine, enteroviruses. And when the gut gets disrupted, the gut gets leaky. And that leaky gut intestinal permeability disorder drives food sensitivities. But the
Hmm.
leaky gut allows bad bugs from the gut to translocate from the gut in the bloodstream, go to different body parts. So
Mm.
the enteroviruses go to breast tissue and increase breast cancer risk. Enteroviruses go to the cells in the pancreas and make insulin. That's one of the reasons they stop making insulin. They're still there, but they're just dormant.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so absolutely fascinating, even for somebody who's been around the block a few times. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the coolest, most exciting thing. And so truly, ideally, there's a way now that we're kind of figuring out where we could actually turn them dudes back on. Gotta get rid of the infection. Gotta stop these cells from becoming their own engine of inflammation. You gotta get some Tudcut, comes in a capsule form, going to wake them up. But truly, here's like, oh my gosh, well, that's why they wouldn't wake up, or that's why the body, they wouldn't make insulin. It wasn't that they were destroyed, they were just dormant. And I hadn't figured out yet what could wake them up. But now it
Wow.
seems like the science is very clear about what can actually wake those guys up again.
My mind is blown.
I
I mean,
know, it blows my mind
absolutely
too.
blown. I mean, because most of the things that I've heard doesn't even come close to that. And this Tudka that you speak about, is it in supplemental form or is it
just
on,
just in a capsule form.
and
Yep.
you can buy it at a health food store?
Well, the quality of the products available at your local store are really poor. They don't tend to have in them what they should. They have fillers that make it really hard to actually absorb the nutrients, or actually fillers that hurt the system, especially when you got this autoimmune stuff. And so there's very specific quality sort of supplements out there. Typically, got to get them online.
Hmm.
But when you get the right ones, including this one made by Body Bio, which is the one that Harvard used, that's available. It's hard to get because it helps with so many things. The manufacturer has a hard time keeping it in stock nowadays, kind of a thing. But yeah, it's out there capsule form with the kids that we see that are too young to swallow capsules. You take it out, you mix it with food. Um, Raspberry sorbet is an incredible thing to mix things in for little
Hmm.
kids because it totally
Hmm.
hides the taste of about anything. Now, of course, you got to kind of do the other stuff. You got to fix the gut.
Sure.
You got to get rid of the leaky gut.
And
You
like you
got to
said, fix the
use
infection.
yeah, so like we
Yeah.
use something out of Canada. It's a nano silver product called pH structured silver solution that can get rid of any infection, no matter where it is, no matter what kind it is. I did a video not too long ago. I'm like, well, this, gets rid of all these infections that drive chronic disease, such as the enteroviruses, but it also gets rid of malaria. Here's the scientific study about how it kills malaria. I'm
Wow.
telling you, it can kill anything, including malaria, right?
Wow.
And so, with that kind of thing to get rid of infections, and this infectious part is something that almost always gets missed by people. They miss the fact that this infection is driving this stuff. So, that's one of those things where we set the foundation. You just can't get over the hump. When you get rid of these infections that are
Hmm.
coming from the outside, creating chronic disease, or like the bad bugs that get from the gut into the bloodstream, including these enteroviruses, the big one for type 1 diabetes is Coxsackie virus B4. So, but you can just check this in a simple blood test. Any lab can run hey, what infections are bugging you? And so in Coxsackie virus, we run it on everybody because that's all these 6 different kinds of
Standard.
Coxsackie. This is
Mm.
what that, well, the B4 is the one that gets into the pancreatic beta islet cells. There's kind of a different one that gets into the breast tissue, but this pH structured silver solution out of Canada will get rid of all those infections. Well, now you get rid of the infection. Now the tissue is ready to be healed. And this is where
Wow.
the healing process comes from.
Like I said, mind totally blown. What is frustrating to me is this is not mainstream and it should be 100%. There should not be a type 1 diabetic who's diagnosed that doesn't go down this path, which is why I so much encourage, even if you're not on the type 1 path with any autoimmune, that you work with a functional medicine doctor because these are the things that they know and they can help you like what you're saying. The work you're doing to me. I'm like literally, I'm sitting here trying to process every little thing that you've said.
And I keep
Is
looking at your wonderful background. Before we started, I said, well, I was an art history and English major before I went into medicine. And I use music and art and literature to like, well, this is how the body works and this is how the art works. And so I commented how much I love the background. It looks like a Jackson Pollock. I use his technique compared to the Renaissance Michelangelo stuff to demonstrate these concepts. And you told me that actually you and your husband and your child did
yeah,
that.
yeah, my
I keep
children.
looking
Yeah.
I keep looking behind you at how cool that painting is.
I love that because it's messy, right?
It
Everything
is so
we
cool and
talk
messy.
about was messy, you know? So, can you talk a little bit about, and this is a new word for me, maybe not for others, but epigenetics.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what that means.
Yeah. So we used to think that our genes, our DNA, the genes, DNA in our cells that tell the cells what to do, was hardwired. Whatever we got good, bad, otherwise, from parents, grandparents, we're stuck with it. Hopefully we got more good than bad from my parents and grandparents. And you look at your parents and grandparents and go, geez, there's some bad stuff going on.
Yeah.
And hopefully I got the good stuff. Well, it turns out it's not what genes you have, it's which ones get turned on and turned off.
Hmm.
And so this is called epigenetics, the things that influence gene expression without changing the genetic code itself. And it turns out there's a lot of bad genes every cell in the body. Got to turn them off. A lot of good genes. Got to turn them on. When people start getting this stuff, it's because they turned on the bad genes and turned off the good genes in every cell in the body. And this is where it's so easy to get a whole bunch of stuff, one thing after another, because all the cells are being told the wrong information.
Mm.
So we go, okay, let's fix this. Let's do the things that will turn off the bad, turn on the good, including that TUDCA chaperone molecule, but also TUDCA works through epigenetics. It flips genes on and off in every cell in the body. And meditation turns on and off this stuff. Um, there's something we use a ton of to restore gut health. There's a big central mechanism where the vitamin D receptors in the gut become resistant to vitamin D. And even though
Mm.
every cell in the body has vitamin D receptors, including the placenta has vitamin D receptors, including the fetus before being born has vitamin D receptors all over the place. Vitamin D receptors become resistant to vitamin D. And this is a big central mechanism in what drives gut issues, but everything else. So you can fix that vitamin D receptor resistance with three things: vitamin D, probiotic, and this thing called butyrate. Now, most people hear the first two.
Hmm.
You referenced the probiotics originally. This butyrate made by the good bacteria in our cells, once again, naturally occurring in our system. But the good bacteria in our gut gets beat up by stress and antibiotics and meds and blah, blah, blah. So they're supposed to make this butyrate. And if you use the three things of supplements, you fix this vitamin D receptor resistance. The original data was, oh my gosh, this is exactly what you want to do to fix autoimmune disease of the gut, like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's back in 2018. They also said, geez, this looks like what you want to do to fix about anything. And then
Mm.
6 months later, they go, oh my goodness, this is a nuclear weapon. I'm quoting the scientific article title, a nuclear weapon against metabolic syndrome, insulin and blood sugar control issues, obesity, abnormal weight gain, and cholesterol issues. And then since that time, they're like, oh my gosh, this is like a central mechanism for all these things, including when we talk about bad genes. Well, some people are born with genes that predispose them to things like type
Mm.
1 diabetes. Okay. And you go, well, geez, I'm kind of destined to get it if I got all these genes, or at least a higher level. But it turns out, for example, not just type 1 diabetes genes, but other genes like autism genes and other genes, they're actually vitamin D dependent. They're
Mm.
tied into this whole system at the same time. And so you say, well, okay, I got these genes that might predispose me to type 1 diabetes, autism, other things. I just got to make sure those dudes are turned off, right? And so what happens is vitamin D hits the vitamin D receptors when they're sensitive like they should be. The vitamin D receptors produce a protein called vitamin D response element. They go to the other genes that are there, like the genes that predispose to type 1 diabetes, turn them off.
Wow.
Thus, they call them vitamin D responsive genes. And you're like, oh, that is so cool, this epigenetic thing. We can turn off bad genes and turn on good genes in the body. Now, one of the reasons why women get 80% of all autoimmune disease, there's two major reasons. One is epigenetics. So women have two copies of the X chromosome. Men have one X, one Y, every cell in the body. Well, there's so many bad genes on the X chromosome
Mm,
that for a woman to be optimally healthy, she has to shut down at least 85% of all the genes
wow.
on that second X chromosome. Otherwise, there's excessive X chromosome
Wow.
influence on health. So women have to almost totally shut down an entire chromosome to stay healthy. Oh my gosh, is that a huge job? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. But we know how to keep bad ones shut down and good ones turned on. So we're like, oh my gosh, you're kind of behind the eight ball, but we can help the body do a much better job and really get something in a position where they don't end up getting a whole lot of stuff.
Wow. That's incredible. That again, mine just completely blown. And I wanted to mention you referenced, the vitamin D and how crucial it is. I had read that they see a lot of vitamin D deficiency in cancer patients. So that must be also connected as well.
Correct, correct. Yeah, and the human body is very bad at making vitamin D from sun exposure nowadays for a variety of reasons. And our foods don't tend to have the vitamin D
Mm,
content they used to. So, like oily fish has a lot of vitamin D, but if fish, so like in Europe, what they'll see, this is the Scandinavian countries, for example, is to kind of counterbalance how far away they are from the equator, where they're not going to make vitamin D very well. Historically, they've eaten a lot of oily fish. Well, the vitamin D content of farm-raised fish is only
mm,
20% for wild caught, and 85 to 90% of the fish being consumed in Europe is farm-raised now. And so
jeez.
vitamin D levels should be 70 to 90, and so many women, for example, are below 20.
Wow.
Studies show that if a woman gets her vitamin D above 60, she's automatically decreased her risk of ever getting breast cancer by 82%.
Wow.
And that's not even getting to that perfect spot, right? And so this is another thing. So if a woman's vitamin D is above 50 during pregnancy, she decreased the risk of her child ever getting the autoimmune disease multiple sclerosis, the one that attacks the brain, by 50%.
Wow.
50%. There's 200 cases of multiple sclerosis diagnosed every week in the US. If every woman just got her vitamin D above 50 during pregnancy, you'd have 100 less cases every week of that kind of
Wow.
stuff. Um, and then we got the vitamin D receptors that have to be get resistant, and that's where we call it the foundational triad of vitamin D, probiotic, and butyrate all come in capsule form. Vitamin D should be produced by the body from sun exposure, gotten from food, and it doesn't work very well. Probiotics, well, the good bacteria should make. Uh, uh, we should have plenty of good bacteria in our gut. We don't need new ones taken in capsule form. Well, we do because so many things kill the good bacteria,
Mm,
right? And then the good bacteria are gone, being killed by all these things, but they can't make the butyrate. Whoop, take that, fix that vitamin D receptor. Super central
turn it back.
mechanism stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, including cancer prevention. But this is why they also talk about cancer is the flip side of the same coin as autoimmune disease. So everything you do to reverse an autoimmune process or prevent it, you're actually preventing cancer. And
That's
kind of vice
incredible.
versa. If you're doing something to prevent cancer, you're preventing autoimmune disease because they're same coin, different side.
Again, I'm just trying to process everything. That's incredible. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but I know you have other things to do. Where can well first you talked about your book. The book is about the epigenetics or it's about the autoimmune or both?
So it's called the Nurse Practitioner's Guide to Autoimmune Medicine, Reversing and Preventing All Autoimmune Disease. And so we feel very strongly that if we're going to be able to change the way that autoimmune disease is dealt with worldwide, there needs to be an expert in every community that can educate that community that, well, we know where this stuff comes from.
Yeah,
We
for
know
sure.
how to turn it around. Until there is that, communities go, no, I've been told that we don't know where it comes from, can't make it
Hmm.
go away.
Yeah,
Well, we got to change that narrative, right? And
yeah.
so that book there, and then we have two different levels of courses for non-medical people so they can learn about this, including the medical bill detox, where it's 7 free emails. Each one takes a deep dive into these central mechanisms and what people can do to actually reverse it themselves, including you're so on top of things. The very first email epigenetics, epigenetics, and then we go into the infections, and then the
Yeah.
gut, and those other kind of things. But we really want people to, ideally know why this is happening to them, but
Oh,
also be
yes.
in a position to turn around themselves.
Yep.
And
Knowledge is
so,
power. It's so
oh,
powerful.
it
And if you
is,
could,
and there's
if,
so much knowledge out there, and it is so powerful. Um, so my website is drdavidbilstrom.com, and you can access all the blog posts, including the one I've referenced about those vitamin D receptors in 2018 called Vitamin D Does It Again.
okay.
Part one, part two is a big concept. I do two parts. All my videos, if people want to follow me on social media, these videos come out, and I'm always holding up the scientific article that my talk is based on, because I think it's super important that
Hmm.
people realize this is not one person's opinion. This is the
Sure.
science.
Sure.
And the science is so cool about this stuff. It blows
Yeah.
everybody's minds, including my own.
Yeah.
But boy, is this powerful to know the science.
Yeah. No, I think that's incredible. I'm not sure I had much to start with, but the rest of it is gone for sure.
Well, you're sitting in front of the perfect painting for your mind to be blown, I think.
I so appreciate Dr. Bilstrom for coming on and everything that you've shared with us. Do you, your practice, is it just in person or do you also do online?
No, that's why we see people from pretty much every state in the country, as well as 21 time zones worldwide. So we have telehealth availability, so we can see anybody from any place.
Yeah, and I encourage it so much. You might have a new patient. I'm really very intrigued with everything that you said. I really appreciate your time and coming on our little show, Everything's Messy. And I can't wait to hear what else you're doing, really.
Thank you so much for having me,
Maybe
Sarah. It's
we
been
could have you
my
on
pleasure.
again. Yeah, maybe we could
Oh,
have you on again and do, a specific topic next time as well.
I
So,
mean, get messy again. I like that
yeah.
idea.
Okay. Thank you so much.